Okay, let's make another video and let's talk about men as a living embodiment of the feminine. You know, like I've said so many times before, the feminine, the divine feminine, doesn't mean women only or the goddess. The divine feminine means, or feminine means, direct mystic experiences of the holy, of the spirit, of the soul. Yes? So you have your dreams, your visions, your intuitions, your art, poetry. And there are many men in our culture, in the human history, who were a living embodiment of the feminine. That is to say, they had the spirit, the soul, they were open out in the back, as Joseph Campbell used to say, to this dimension, and then it spoke through them. They either had dreams that they communicated to their community, prophets, poets, or they had art. You know, we can think about Picasso, we can think about, there are many artists, I'm going blank suddenly, but there are many male artists who were painting that way. I did. That's a 1996 painting there behind me of the feminine. So the feminine doesn't mean women only. Now, the image of the feminine, of the soul, archetypally, is a woman. Because women are closer, first of all, because women are closer to intuition, to that communication from the other side, from the spirit. They are closer because we men, we have had access to education for thousands of years, 2,000 years. Women haven't. They were not allowed. So they were not educated out of it. We were. But it's coming back. I know men that are coming to me, most people that are coming to me with dreams and having a space to do this work are usually women. Because like I said, women are closer to this dimension of the soul. But I have men now coming as well. Because of the internet, because of the information is spreading, and people, men are still more worried or more afraid that they're going to be thought as crazy when they come. But they are coming. More and more are opening, and more because of the internet, because of the books, because of the work, like you do, my work. It opens up and allows people to feel safe to speak about these irrational things. Because in our society, like I said before, the irrational is still ridiculed. Only the rational mind, the intellect, the reading of the books, the education, the information that you get from TV, from newspapers, and is valued. Not something that you receive directly from within you, but outside. That's still valued. That is the most important thing that is valued in our society. Not only Western society, but all over society of the globe. Yep. So I'll give you a few examples, things that come to mind, but there are many men that are embodiment of the feminine. What I mean by embodiment, I mean that, like I said before, they become a conduit, an open door through which the spirit, the divine, the holy communicates. Usually through art, through writing, through art, through painting, drawing, yeah. And so they become of service to the community. Once you open up in the back, once you open up this intuitive connection to the holy, to the spirit, it speaks through you, and your job then becomes to be of service to the community, to be helpful, to bring others, to help others come out from this unconsciousness, from this slumber of not knowing who they really are, that there is this other connection, a forgotten part of them that wants attention, that wants to be part of their life, wants to be part, of our community, of our life, everyday life, and that's the soul. Yeah. Okay, so I'll tell you a story of a Chinese, I think it's a Chinese story, of a young man who stood at a window and heard someone praying the sutra of some sort, and he got enlightened. And the story is of, let me just have a look, of I always forget his name, but I'll get it for you. Of Huineng. Huineng, that's his name. And the story goes like this. So this is what I wrote a few years ago. I'll read it to you quickly. Story of a Huineng. Okay, another such fantastic story that nicely illustrates the difference between mediated elimination of religion and direct and instant illumination from the soul is the ancient legend of Huineng, who was an illiterate woodcutter. So this is a Chinese story. He was standing one day at the door of a private home, waiting for an order, when he overheard someone inside intoning the verses of Heart Sutra. All is emptiness, is what he heard. The very form is emptiness, no clouds, no world. And immediately illuminated, he got it. In other words, what he was listening to was sutra that allows you, your ego, to get out of your own way. So something speaks to you intuitively, and when you get out of your own, we get the ego out of the way, you get illuminated, you get answers. You see, you get this connection to the other side, and the spirit gives you the things that you want. Do you remember my dream that I shared with you? That was 94 or 93, I can't remember now exactly. I've got it written somewhere. Where I woke up in the middle of the night, and above my head, on my left side, hovered the image of the feminine, a woman, all dressed in white, big dark eyes. She's floating like a bee, like a moon above me, lit up like the moon, white. And she said to me, Marek, don't lose the spirit, and I will show you everything you're looking for. Yeah? So if you focus, if you incubate your energy inwards, your energy, by your energy I mean your libido, your sexual energy. If you incubate it inwards, it grows within you, and then you will start to be more and more creative and intuitive. You will actually have strength, more physical strength. You're not going to age as quickly. You're not going to. You're going to feel better. Your health will improve as well. So this is an important subject. I've spoken about this many times. But anyway, she said this, and all the answers that I got, pretty much everything, all the wisdom and enlightenment and all the illuminations that I got were in the dreams and intuitively, in art. From then on, that's how I lived my whole life. That's how I live to this day. So that's how I got the images or the stories or the insights that I've shared with you recently. The unity of our life, the end of World War III, all these things, the coming of the new world order, led by BRICS and so on. I've shared with you all this. This is what's shown to me in dreams, and this is coming true. So this guy is Huineng. He goes and he listens to this. He is, one example of a male that actually is a representative then of the feminine, of the direct way of receiving illumination and insight. That's what feminine is. And now he's illuminated, so he goes into a monastery. Yep. So he goes to a monastery, leaving his mother and all behind. Well, he can't even read Chinese, let alone Sanskrit, so he is put to work in the kitchen. The young monks are under the discipline of an abbot, and the abbot is getting old. It's time for him to retire. And so he sets up a little contest. Anyone who can write 4 verses summing up Buddhism and give the most elucidating exposition of Buddhism will be the next abbot. So there was a young man in the monastery that everybody knew was going to be the great one, and he wrote on the wall, "The body is the tree of illumination. The mind is a mind mirror bright. The mind is a mirror through which illumination is achieved. Always keep it dusted, clean, less dust on it, a light. That's the guy that everyone thought that is going to win. The perfect student. Hunan comes out from the kitchen and asks his friend to read him that. And the friend reads it and he says, now write this. The body is not the body tree. The mind no mirror bright, since nothing is there, on what should dust alight? So he got it. He got the message that, you gotta get out of your own way. Not even a mind, no mind, no mind. Remember me talking about this movie with Tom Cruise, where this is during, I think, Civil War in the US, and he goes to Japan to train the Japanese forces against rebels, and the rebels were the old way of the samurai, and he gets captured by the samurai, and then he wants to learn how to fight swords, and every time he fights with the samurai he loses, until one young samurai takes pity on him, comes up to him, speaks a little bit of English, says, no mind, no mind, no mind. In other words, center, and just trust your intuition, see what happens. And he did, and he started to actually win a few strokes, not fights, but a few strokes. He managed to defeat his opponent eventually. So that's what he means by this. On what should dust alight? So this is another example. This is just the first. I'll give you other examples. What are we going for time? Of man as embodiment of the divine feminine. He got it. He got out of his own way. The spirit, the feminine, the soul talks through him now. Yeah? So, well, this is really one step closer to the ultimate doctrine. When the abbot came down the next morning, all the monks were jabbering. No one knew who had written that on the wall, and the abbot pretended to be very angry, and he took his slipper and wiped it off. The young monks went through the day. Then that evening the abbot calls Hunan to him and says, come up here. Here are the robes of office. Here is the begging bowl of the patriarch. Go away. Now, what would happen to the discipline of all these young monks if the religion should be broken up like this with ultimate illumination? They are not ready for it yet. You see? In other words, the monks were not ready for direct communication, getting out of their own way and being intuitive and getting their own. They still needed education. In other words, they still needed practice, someone to tell them what to do. From the outside, not already from within them. Hunan was already there. He was a representative of the divine family, or embodiment of the divine family. He got all his illumination answers directly from within. The monks didn't. They still needed to read the scripture. They still needed to memorize quotes. They still needed to memorize instruction. He didn't. He was already an embodiment of the feminine divine. Another example of the embodiment, man as an embodiment of the feminine divine, is of course Carl Jung. And if many of you no doubt are familiar with his work, but I'll give you just one example of his dreams. He had many direct experiences. He wrote about them in Memories, Dreams, Reflections. Probably one of his best books. The others are good, but in my opinion, they are too soaked in science rather than direct experiences. He goes to really, he tries really hard for his work to be scientific rather than mystical. He didn't want to be associated initially with mysticism, with direct experiences. He wanted to prove that he's scientific, a doctor, a professor. It didn't really work out well for him, because all the books that are the more scientific books like Ion and The Archetype of the Collective Unconscious, difficult reading because he tries so hard to turn it into a science rather than what it is. It's simply direct experience of the holy. Anyway, in one of his dreams, I remember that's stuck in my mind. He was in a town called Liverpool. And there, in a fountain in the center square of a city, was a fountain, and the fountain was a tree, the tree that was a light. He gives the name of a tree, I can't remember now, but the tree was a light. From then on, I think from then on, he started to receive a lot more information. He was focused, he was centered on his intuition. That's when he wrote a lot of things. That's where he wrote. He wrote the Red Book, I think the Blood Book. His art started to flower. You know, he painted, initially he painted the image of the archetype of the wise old man, which is another way of saying embodiment of the male embodiment of the feminine, Philemon. The winged being, remember the winged being dressed in green? And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, and people don't notice, but the Philemon's face and Jung's face are almost identical. So Jung is another example of a man that is embodiment of the divine feminine. There are many others. Buddha was, of course, embodiment. That's why his messages are so powerful to this day. He was, of course, embodiment of the divine feminine, because after his enlightenment, after sitting under the Bodhi tree, and finally, you know, winning the war against the ego, against the body and its needs, which was the monster Mara, and finally opening up his middle eye, the you know, what I call eye of the heart, your intuition. He saw in his vision, he saw his own life beyond lives, in other words, his eternal part, his divine part, or the holy, and he saw the interconnectedness of all of existence. And after that, he tried to teach people how to do what he did. You know, that's what he was. Of course, he was working service to the community by teaching, by helping others to reconnect with that dimension of their life which has been forgotten, to become an envoy themselves, to become a door, a radio station, if you like, that is connected from that dimension. And then communicate whatever that the soul communicates through them. It's usually through art, through poetry, if you like. So we'll go into a few poets like Rumi in a moment. But so one of his famous sermons is the Flower Sermon. The Flower Sermon gets interpreted many different ways. But if you look at if you just, you know, read the Flower Sermon, what comes to you straight away would be that Buddha was going to give a sermon. I'll tell you about the Flower Sermon quickly. Buddha was going to give a sermon, and people have gathered around him, you know, to listen to what he was going to say. So he sat in the center, and all he did is lifted a flower. That was his sermon. And only one of the listeners got the message, nodded his head. The rest were, you know, wide-eyed, couldn't understand what was going on, and Buddha had to talk about whatever he wanted to talk about. The meaning of that sermon is a flower. A flower does not need to Google how to flower, how to grow. It doesn't need the Buddha to explain its own growing process. It knows how to do it from itself. You see, and that's what his message, that's what Buddha's whole message has been and is to this day, to everyone, to anyone that is willing to listen. You have your own resources, you have your own connection to the spirit. Listen, get out of your own way, be like the flower. Just grow from within you. What is being communicated to you in dreams, intuitively, you know? Women are, like I said, women are closer to intuition because they didn't have access to education, only maybe in the last 100 years. So he wasn't educated out of them. Men have a lot longer history of education, and we have been brainwashed, if you like. Not allowed this irrational stuff. Only science, the rational mind is allowed. But like I said, it's coming back now. I am getting contact with men more and more that are, you know, having experiences as children, what happens to them. Something's changed in their whole life, and they are becoming an envoy to the soul. So that's what it means to be an embodiment of the feminine divine. Yeah. So that was the Buddha. Christ had the same thing, Jesus. Jesus is another example of a man as an envoy, as an embodiment of the feminine divine, of the direct access to the holy, to the Spirit. He went to the best teacher of the time, of John the Baptist, and got baptized in the river. Something happened while he was in the river to Christ. It wasn't because thanks of John the Baptist, but Jesus was open up enough to hear a voice within him, and he realized that he didn't find what he was looking for in John the Baptist, and had to go past him to his own experiences, of his own mystic experiences of the Spirit. So he went to the desert, and we don't know exactly what the experiences were. We don't have it written. There's no record of that, but we know that, like the Buddha, Jesus too had to fight with a monster. In Christianity we call that the devil, but it simply means dividedness. In other words, dividedness from the Spirit. Yeah, he had to fight that. So it's your ego getting out of your own way. And once he did have his own visions and experiences, after which he said, whoever sees me sees the Father. In other words, whoever sees Jesus sees God. And Jesus was an embodiment of the divine family. He was the embodiment of the holy, of the Spirit, of the divine. You know, whether we call it God or goddess, it means the same thing. It means the divine, yeah, the Spirit. And after that, he went out into the world and started his teaching career. He became an envoy of the soul, of service to humanity. Of course, he got killed early because of the way he was teaching others to be free from the system, from the religions. And of course, you can't have that, because if you are free, you have your own direct experiences, your own connection to the Spirit. So what is the use of religion, of religion, or the authorities who claim to be the only ones that have the ear of God? So you had to be done away with. There are lots of examples. There is Al-Halaj, a Persian mystic. He also said, I and God are one. You know, and he was killed. There's Giordano Bruno in 1600. He had his own visions of the way that the universe works. That Earth is not really the center of the universe. It's just part of the planets that circle around the sun and so on. And of course, the church killed him. There are many examples. You know, I can think of perhaps Joseph Campbell. But Joseph Campbell, his way of learning wasn't so much direct from dreams and visions and intuitions, although later it was usually from reading. But he also admits, he also wanted to be associated really with science. He didn't want to be associated with the mystical, because the mystical, like I said, is frowned upon. It's ridiculed in our society. So you're not going to get any airtime. You're not going to get any attention from outside if you peddle the mystical. You're not going to get conferences. You're not going to get invited for talks. You're not going to get, you know, he was still a teacher at that time, so he had to be careful. But he also admits that he had a little table, had his favorite chair, and while he was reading, he would underline things, sentences that would seem important to him. I do exactly the same way, and many of you, I'm sure, too, that something speaks to you then. If you focus long enough, if you sit there and you read, usually what happens to me when I haven't been connected, or I haven't been reading that way, the mystical way of reading, not the reading from cover to cover, but mystical way of reading, when you get out of your own way, and then sentences start to become the way that the Spirit starts to communicate to you. Okay? So he admits that as well, but that was much, much later in his life, when he was already retired from being a professor, when he was talking to, making interviews and so on, that he was a maverick. So he Campbell can be called an envoy of the feminine, a male embodiment of the feminine divine too, but he hid that, like Campbell, like Jung hid his own as well, because that was frowned upon, and he wanted to be a scientist, a professor, a doctor. So did Campbell. But later in life they both admitted that this is the only, that was the way that was communicated, the information, the insights were actually communicated to him. Yeah. So that's another example of a man that is embodiment of the divine feminine. Of course, then you got the Persian poets, Rumi, Hafez, all of these. We don't know, for instance, with Rumi, whether he had actually direct experiences. There's no history whether he had a dream or a vision, or there's only his poetry. But we know with Hafez, for instance, that he did have an experience after which, mystic experience, after which he became a poet and started communicated to the community the message that were coming through him. You remember me telling you his story, that he fell in love. He was a delivery boy for a local bakery, and he fell in love with a woman that was in upper class, the elites, and he knew that she would never reciprocate. She would never love him back. So he was brokenhearted, and he went to pray somewhere, or to cry about his lot in some quiet place. And one day, bang, there was an angel, there was a light where he was there, and he told him what to say, what to do, what he write, and he stuck with that for the rest of his life, and he was a living embodiment of the feminine, a man as a living example of a man as a living embodiment of the feminine. He as a door, as a like I said, like a radio station that communicates from the other side for the rest of the community, in service to community. So there are many, many men. So like I said, the feminine, the divine feminine, does not mean women only. It means men as well. Look at me. I don't like to talk about this in such a way, but the books that I write, all the posts that I share with you on social media, especially on Facebook, the video that I'm making for you right now, it's all the same. It happens that when I get inspired, even now when I'm talking to you, I wasn't exactly, I knew what I wanted to say, that that came to me. I'm always worried that I don't know what I'm going to speak to you about in the next video. So I contemplate this, I might make a few plans, I might even have a concrete plan of what I'm going to talk about, and on the day that I'm making the video, it changes. And I talk about something else. Something catches my eye, something I read, I look through my work that I've written, and something else becomes more important, and I talk about that without any preparation, like I'm talking to you now. I did hardly any preparation. It came to me while I was driving somewhere, that I should actually discuss that men too are a living embodiment of the feminine, because the idea is, I'm trying to stress here that the idea is that only women are an embodiment of the feminine. No, men are, many men are actually more, like I said to you, men are coming and contacting with me, mostly just still women, because women are closer to intuition, but there are also men are coming out as well because of the work, more widely known work of Campbell or Jung or Rumi or Hugh Neng, even my work, I suppose. And they feel more safer to come out with these things which previously were laughed at or ridiculed. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. I'm going to end because my dog's going to destroy the door in a moment. So that's what I mean by a man being an embodiment of the feminine. They also are the door, the means through which the spirit, the holy, the divine communicates in the world and wants to help others to get out and realize that their life is not just what you see just outside in society, but there's something much deeper. If you look within, if you trust your intuition, there's something much deeper that is leading you to realization that it is the more important part of you, rather than what you see, what you have been told in society. Yeah? Okay, that's what I wanted to say, and thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.